Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome to another session. This session is basically for those who have difficulties and who had errors, and we will try to go in depth into little things. So, those of you who are familiar with the correct basic, if you have done hotel, customer, and room, probably you are fine. You don't need to watch this video. But if you haven't done the room part, the room crud, you can watch this video because we are going to touch that. Because you may have done the hotel customer. The difference is in the room crud you have to pull out the data from hotel table. So we will touch on that a little bit. Okay, so we will try to touch in more details. So one of the problems that students were having is when they set up the Laravel page, one issue was they were not having the latest Laravel. This case, for example, I have created a project, and this project, let me show you, for example, PHP artisan version. You can check your version like this. Look at this one, for example, this is 7.28. If you are not having 8 and above, then most of the tutorial that I did in the initial stages are going to be the same, because students would have realized some of the way they have represented the migrations, and also the way they have represented the routes are different. So in 7 point and onwards, before 8, there are several changes that are going to be different. Okay, so okay, that's that. Now let me show you, for example, one of the differences you will see in the case of 7.3 and above. You will see this is the way IDs are represented. But if your version is below 7, then the IDs are represented using a different, a little bit weird way. It has this increments. The auto increment field is given a different way, and now you can see the auto increment is just using ID. So several students had this problem. So you can follow always the latest version of Laravel, that is the best. Then you will not have those kind of random issues that maybe it pops up. So always have the latest version of Laravel, and you can download the latest version by the methods we have discussed without having a specific version. So it will download the latest version. Okay, now always you should remember, in this system, in this Laravel setup, everything starts with our pages, our web pages. So let's go there first. For the I'll start with the customer. For example, hotel, you have seen customer. When we are creating a customer, we have this setup where we are asking the customer. Let me try to go into my page. I have something called theme park here to show you some stuff. Go to customers, you see add customer. This page, this is where things start. When we are adding the customer, we are giving him this interface to fill, or we are giving this interface for the admin to fill in order to add the customer. So when you are adding the customer information, this is the web page you have developed. Now some of the students are still not familiar with even code in that appears here in this page, you see, and that is okay. That's easy to understand. If you are coming from purely uh, non-web world, like if you haven't done any HTML previously, you may not understand it, which is why in the first few classes we touched on HTML a little bit. I know we haven't touched that much, I know, because even HTML you need to really study it separately as a course in order to really understand what's happening in creating static pages and linking the pages together, creating navigations and stuff like that. But still, while you are learning this, you may actually get the same idea. So I will touch on those things as well here. Now for those who have little bit difficulties understanding the initial things starting up, you should realize that these are very simple stuff. For example, we have created partials, and those partials were separate pages. Like for example, in the layouts folder we have this item called css.blade, bottom.blade, meta.blade, navigation.blade. What is happening here is, instead of putting these things in one page, we have just copy pasted them into separate pages, so that it's easy to change them, it's easy to integrate them. So all the navigation item that appear here on the top here appears as a separate file, and this footer appears as a separate file. That is kind of easy to manage. That's why we have this scenario. So what is a navigation tag, what is a div tag, what is an ag tag, what is a class, what does it mean by h reference? This presumably you must know before you come to this module. That's how, according to this module, you must know that. But if someone doesn't know that information, then you have to put an extra effort to learn some of this basic stuff. So that's what I always tell you guys. Anyone can learn anything, but your learning curve is not going to be the same. If someone says, "Oh, what is a div6? What is this class? I don't understand why it is a nav bar. Why don't they call it navigation bar? Why is there a dash here?" Like that. So they may not actually really understand what's happening here because they haven't seen previously Bootstrap. They have not seen CSS, how it is used. In fact, they may not even understand what is a class and an ID. So you really need to have a little bit basic there. And that is the reason why the first few videos are very, very important for you. Okay, so I can't really go on and study HTML and teach you HTML again for this class because it's going to waste a lot of time. So what I want you to do is I want you to separately learn a little bit about HTML, what is CSS, what is a class, what is an ID, how do you represent them, like that. But for most of this course it doesn't really matter because we are giving you some kind of a template where you can put your items. So the navigation bar, you just create it like this. If you use a navigation bar, you have to create a link, new link, copy paste it and edit it, and you are following this architecture. You can have your own design if you understand what's happening, but basically this is a navigation bar, and this navigation bar is within this div header. A div is a section of code, so it divides something, and this item itself is divided. You see, there is another div item on the right, so this right side itself, these four items, is a separate div, these are separate div, and the whole thing itself is another div. See, there's a container, so you put them inside a div inside a div inside a div. This is because to control the layout, and the whole thing is in a nav tag, which is the HTML5 version of navigation. So you are given these classes because these are bootstrap effects that you are going to put them. If you change them, if you bring a different effect, they are going to look different. So it's just about look and feel. Okay, so you don't have to worry much about these things because you can just copy the code in that we have given as a sample page and just edit them for now for this class. How do you create a nice looking navigation panel? It's a different story. It's part of HTML, part of CSS. We can't touch on those things as well. So we are trying to have this basic page in layout, and we are going to try to learn as much of Laravel as possible. So this is navigation, this is your JavaScript page, this is your CSS page, and all of them together you are putting inside this master page. And the way you create master page is in a way that can be extended. You see, this is the page. The page says here is the meta items, here here is the CSS, here is the navigation, including these separate files. So it's easy to change them and integrate them. And any area where you see yield, 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 it means this is content coming from external page, which I'm going to include here, which I'm going to just insert here. You see, so instead of having a fully HTML page with header and a body and ending HTML, these things, we actually create our own pages. For example, customer, we directly start with what matters, and that is, don't worry about anything else, just start with your line. Okay, tail for extends master, so meaning everything I do is going to be inserted into the master layout, into the master page. And then you are saying this is my title, because you have mentioned that there is a title that you can yield, because this guy already knows that there is a file called master.php which you can yield. Okay, so that's why in the layout, when you have master.blade.php, you see, you are yielding your title. This title is coming from another page. So for example, we have a page here. In case of customer, for example, we have customer create blur.php. Here we have title. It's going to yield this title, and this is a section. Everything that is yielding is a section. Next yielding section is the content, which means the main thing that goes in your body. So in the HTML page, this item appears inside your master page. So you see, this is your master.blur.php, and when you have this page like this, yield section, see, content, the layout is there, and all you write as separate files in your customer, in your booking, in your hotel room, they get inserted here. The layout is this is the layout. Everything that you are writing here gets inserted here, content. You see, for example, customer, here say this is the beginning of my content, and at the end, this is the end of my content. So there is no footer in this page, there is no header in this page. This is just HTML stuff that you want to put into the master layout. So that's why you are saying extends layouts at master, means whatever I write here is going to go into the master page. So how do you create simple lists? How do you create ordered lists? What is OL, what is UL, what is H2, what is HR? How do you create a form? This is primarily come from a simple web page, web design. So definitely it will help you if you have a separate course called web designing, maybe, where you can study basics of HTML before coming to the PHP class. So that is something you can do. If you don't have that, what you can do right now is spend more time on reading about that. So what you have here, for example, OL, this is an ordinary list, an ordered list, and we are giving this class that is coming from Bootstrap. And what is happening is we are creating a small list, a bullet list, and because of the way we are giving the layout, giving the effect from Bootstrap, the way it looks like is going to be different. So see, this little thing here is actually three three ordered list items, which means 1 2 3. It's actually 1 2 3 is going to be 1 2 3 3 items. They will represent it like that. But because of the effect we are bringing into from CSS, it looks like this. See, so the way it looks is always changed by CSS. So I hope you understand what it means to have OL, LI. So these are just ordered list, a list item. A means this is a link, a hyperlink, and H reference is where does this hyperlink take you. And if you have slash, it means root. If you have slash something, it means the URL is like this. So this is what basically, guys, you have to remember. And I can't help you if you actually are not putting your own effort here. You have to put your own effort to learn. If you don't understand what's happening, why did you put 2 here? Is there anything else? Students should already know that there are H1, H2, H3, H4, H5, H6, like that. So if you don't know that, of course I can help you more on that, because I can't show you all the possible web pages and web technologies and web text, HTML5 text or HTML text or HTML text. So you have to put a little bit extra effort there if you don't understand what's happening here. For example, there's a form here, and of course if you look at my codes here, they are a little bit indented towards the left. I mean, to make it easier to explain, because I could have put everything in one line, but then it makes it a little bit difficult, because then the line will go up to here, and then I have to scroll vertically and horizontally every time I explain these things. So remember, you have a form, and the form ends here. Let's see, the form ends here. The whole thing is about a form. So everything in between is a form. And if you follow these examples, every time you are creating a customer, creating a hotel, you follow the same method. For example, just start replacing things. This is where the form is submitted if it is a customer. So how do you submit it if it is a hotel, if it is a room? You should know that. Just replace it. So also, what is happening here, this is an input item, and how some students may actually have difficulty in understanding where's the actual input. The actual input is this. The actual input is input type text. It's just a basic simple text box, but because we can't just put a text box, we have put it in a specific order, in a specific color, in specific place. So there's a layout for this. This is the reason why you are seeing this div. So again, you are putting some container, giving an effect, how should it display the items, and also you are seeing this label which says this is what the text box will see, customer name before the item, and how does it look like, where does it is positioned. These things are based on the effect you are giving it, and that is the CSS or the effect you are given from Bootstrap. Now, of course, many of you are already familiar with CSS. Some of you are going to use Bootstrap, some of you are going to use Tailwind. So you can use any specific CSS you like, but some students actually still have no idea of what these basic CSS constructs mean, what these HTML tags even mean sometimes. Okay, and of course, by through this class you will understand many things. For example, every input must have a name, and the name of the input item is the same as your variable name that you are using in the database. See, for example, I have a customer, and when we created the customer, you see, let's see the migration file. If you don't have migration file, you can even see your customer.php, because that is where you put your stuff. You see, id number, id underscore number, name, customer phone. So these are given here as fillable items, saying that my customer database table has these fields which I am going to give you. Okay, that's what it means. So I as a programmer will give you these fields to enter, and here you don't see the actual primary key, which is the id, customer id. That is automatically handled by Laravel, so we don't actually configure it because we don't insert it. It is automatically incremented, so we don't have to enter that. So these are the fields we are entering, and that's why we are asking in this case. For example, also you can see when we are creating customer, we have this page, and in this page you have you can see here name as a separate input item, and then value equal old name. This means just if there was a value here previously, put that value here when it comes back, for example, when the page comes back. So these are example ways of placing values, and always when you have these syntax, that means this is dynamic content. Okay, so just remember that. And I'll see here, for example, and anywhere you see @, this means we are using Laravel's Blade engine, and these dollar signs means these are variables that are coming from our controllers, or that are available to the global for everyone to use, even if they are not being sent by the controller. Like for example, this case errors is not actually sent by controller, but it is available to be used across the web pages. Okay, uh, these error constructs are used exactly like this. Just after the input tag you put this, and then inside the span tag you put this error, and because the error has to be displayed in a specific way, in a specific color, in a specific area, that's why you have to put all these span tags and these strong tags and these things. Okay, so you have to know what they actually mean in order to understand the page basically. Some students were having difficulties there. And these are comments. You can always put comments in the HTML page wherever you like. So sometimes comments may be able to help you. So this is just to say everything here. See, this copy paste is one field. It's not actually, yeah, it's one field. So customer ID. See, in order to have customer ID, you are writing all these things. And of course, as I told you, they can be formatted to have to be written on the same line like this. See, div input, and then here also it can be formatted to lie on the uh, same line like this. Okay, but I like to have it in this format so that it's easy to say there's a name, there's a value like this. Okay, or you can use auto formatting tools that will just automatically format your page every time you write new content. Yeah, okay. uh, Generally some of those extensions work very well, but some of them doesn't really work that well, so you can see here. Yeah, so I also haven't formatted it that way. Anyway, so you have customer ID number, customer name, customer phone number, these things here, and the order you ask the customer is not important, as long as you have these fields. So all these text inputs are going to have a name. See, name is the same as my variable name in the database. Try to use it across the whole system so it's easier to manage. Like for example, see, customer phone number, customer underscore phone. See, customer underscore phone is this box name, and that box name is what will be returned to the controller. So what you write here as the input item name is what is going to be submitted into this URL, and you have already mentioned in your web.php, which is where you are going to configure your routes. So web.php, in the web.php, as I told you, you can just press Ctrl P and type web.php, and you'll see where the pages are usually. Otherwise you have to go manually, routes, open routes, web.php, you have to open them separately. Here we said whenever you have a resourceful route, which is a model which has a controller which has a migration, so this is a typical table, you can always use a resourceful route because it's going to have add, edit, delete, view on those things, and these are all going to be the same because you are just going to add, edit, delete. See, all the rooms, all the hotels, all the customers, activities, these things are going to be basic correct, so you are just going to add, edit, delete, which makes it easier when you have them inserted as resource routes rather than these kind of entries. Okay, we'll come to these things later. So that is what happened. So another important thing is, in some cases when you are setting up your database, you may have a database and then some systems may not have a password. So remove this line if the password is incorrect, or for example it says access to MySQL denied with password yes, like that kind of comments. Those actually tell you that your system doesn't really have a password. So they actually may be different from the system that I am teaching, so it may have little differences, but you should be able to adapt. So keeping that in your mind. Okay, one more item we have to see is when you are creating the controller model and all these migrations, using PHP artisan make model dash mcr space dash mcr, if you remember, that is where how we create a model, a controller which is resourceful. So what it does is, for example, it creates a customer class like the way I have explained in the customer CRUD. So it creates this class, it's empty, of course, we have filled it up. It creates this controller called customer controller, okay, but it has these items, it doesn't have the details. We are supposed to configure them, so it doesn't have the details, but it has these items. So if you go through separate videos that I made for these, you will understand more details of customer CRUD as well. So that's how we generate them, and plus it generates the database file. So what you have seen is database slash migration. So migration is a folder inside your database, migration. Okay, see here, this is the migration, database migrations. In Laravel you are only creating the database and linking it. So you have your database and you are saying this is my database, and that's it. The database is connected to your Laravel project, and anytime you want to do a table, create a table, or make some kind of setup, then you have to actually send it through uh, this Laravel migration. Okay, yeah, so you have to call through Laravel migration. So you create a separate migration page, and if it is already created during the model creation, you already have the file, you just have to fill it out. Let's say, for example, for hotel table, we create these things, this is the ID, this is the name, and every table by default will have this field. No problem, just keep them, don't worry about them. You insert the field that you have to insert and continue to use normal tables, but this is going to be the key that you will use in order to identify your table data. Okay, remember that. And when you migrate, several things happen. Sometimes it says migration successful, but there is no data. Some students say migration was successful, but there is no data in your database, the table was not created. You can always manually drop tables. Sometimes the table is half created and due to an error it stops. If that happens, you can just do migration rollback. You can just say PHP artisan migrate rollback. So that rollback will delete that table from the database. If it doesn't, you can just always go again to the console or to the command prompt. Okay, I don't have WAMP right now. Okay, so you can always go to the MySQL database and always change that, or you can use phpMyAdmin and go to your phpMyAdmin page, or like a small SQL file like this. In fact, I could give this to you. You can just use here show databases, and then for example, if you know the database, use theme park island. In this case, remember we have created theme park database. Now this is a different database than the database I have taught in the other classes, show tables. So don't worry about that. We create multiple databases sometimes to test things around. Okay, see, you can always check. And if you created, let's say, hotel table, but hotel table had some issues, so there was errors, but still hotel tables were created, and when you trigger php artisan migrate colon rollback, and if it doesn't roll back, then you can just go here and delete it. You can just say drop table, and then give the table name, for example, activities. Okay, give correct spelling, of course, activities. See, you can always drop it manually, and then you can go and create it again, php artisan migrate, and it will be able to migrate again. So those kind of simple things you really need to understand. Okay, another things is how the data flows between pages and between controllers. So we said you are here on the first page, which is customer create, for example, and then while you are here, you are inserting this data, and the inputs have these names. Inputs have your database field names. See, customer phone number has a customer phone number column, and when you submit this submit button or create button, of course it is actually a submit button, you can give any name you like, right? So if you click the submit button, it takes the data into your controller, and because this is a creating of customer, by default in the web.php, it will actually have web.php, and then you will see it has this item for the rooms, for example, for hotels customers. And this, as I told you guys, this means this is not one route, this means 6 routes, all of them in the single route, add, edit, delete. Now here also, if you are using Laravel 8 and above, 8 point something, for example, the way you write these are a little bit different. So those who have seen and worked with Laravel 8, for example, in some programs I have also shown that, I think. If not, I will show them. The way you create them is different little bit. So if you have created this project during the first classes, you may have downloaded a little bit older version of Laravel. But if you have if you already have Laravel 8, depending on your PHP version, of course, if your PHP version is little old, it will not download Laravel 8. So if Laravel 8 is there, if you have Laravel 8, you can always use the best way to represent the routes. Okay, and if you remember, that is different little bit. You have to put a class here like this, and then colons are not given anymore, so those little changes are there. So the way you give the route is a little bit different. So if you have any issues, of course you can always separately chat with me on Telegram, and we could discuss, and I'll give you samples of how to do that and get your solution working. Okay, so I have shown in the class how the customer CRUD is created, what happens when you go to this one, fill this up and create, how the data is represented. Very detailed explanation I have given here. So again, when you fill this page, route tells what should happen, and because the route already has this item called resource customer, for example, controller, go to customer controller, the create request goes into customer controller, and then you have this customer controller. And in this customer controller you have the create method, see, and store method is where the data will be sent, actually not create method. Create method is when you click customer from here, it triggers create, but if you send a post request to the same URL, then that is a store request. And store request is something like this. See, for example, you are getting this information and this information is coming from your request variable. This is because this is a HTTP request variable, and in this HTTP request variable you get this information. You are doing some validation to check if name, ID card and phone number is there, and if not, you will not continue. If this customer exists, for example, so this is a function you have created in your class where you are looking if this customer exists or not. See, okay, so that way you can check if the customer exists and insert the customer only if the customer doesn't exist already. So you can see here, when you're creating a customer, it has the same variable. See, ID number, customer phone, ID number, and this request brings everything from that page. So those kind of things you must remember. Simple stuff. And you don't always have to create a function if you want to look if something exists or not. You can also do it in different ways, which you might see through other videos that I have done. Some example is, if you want to actually get something and it doesn't exist, you can always look at the exist method. Exists. Okay. Anyway, so the creator will receive the items, it will process the items, and then it will save the item. That's important. See, save the item. So this is how we do it. If you don't have this line, it's not going to save to the database. So it's very important that you follow the instructions and copy what is in the video and try your best to come up with a page where you can add, edit, delete hotel, add, edit, delete customer. Okay, so that is important basic stuff about these things. And when you are returning the home page for each item index, what does this mean? You have seen this in the hotel video, in the customer video. That means we are returning these customers into the home page, because how can you go into, for example, customers home page and all the customers are displayed here without you having to give them? Okay, it's not magic, it's just basically what you do manually. See, you are querying all the customers using pagenet, and after you are sending the items to the variable, you are sending the variable across using this compact function into the view. Okay. So all these things are like that. Then when it comes to edit, for example, again edit and update are different. Edit means which is the page I should display when I'm sending the customer to the edit page. And if you use the model class to create the controller, like PHP artisan make model minus MCR, then you are actually going to have these kind of controllers where the controller will give you the actual customer itself. In some of you, when you create the controller separately, you're going to have an ID here, but in reality it can actually give you just the object it is as it is, so you don't have to do a second query here. Okay, so that's the idea of these initial things. After the customer edits the edit page, then the data will come to the update page. So let's have a look at the edit page. So you know what's happening in the current, in this I have explained this in the customer, I don't have to go through again. So in the customer you have this form, in the edit you have the same form, but the data already comes from the page. How do you know that? So you can see here already we are getting the data from the create.blur.php. So customer controller, you can see here it is sending the data. Okay. So update method receives all the items. Again you have to do validation. The same items, that this form that you have created in the create and edit are the same, and they have the same items. See, ID number is the name of the input, and ID number is the name of the uh, form group. So like that you have to understand this basic construct, what they mean actually, before you can make a column like this. So if you already have the sample data, what you can use, you can reuse them, or you can create your own design for it and follow along with the videos, no problem. And if you don't have any of these things, just ping me and I'll give it to you, I'll send it to you. So you have to try hard in order to make this project work. And if you really think about this, this is the first part of your assignment. Mm. So Akbar sir is so they are going to ask the students to uh, give those files. So you have to remember always, when you create these files, you follow along as the lecturers instruct, so that assignment will be complete, you know. So when you submit those data as an assignment, they already have the similar kind of template. If you don't know already how to create a separate page, just follow along these pages and create the same pages like that. That's not a problem, because your target here is to manipulate Laravel, not to create nice looking HTML pages. Okay, so that is edit page. It will go into the edit page, it will grab the data from the you see, edit page is triggered by my edit function, and the edit function is already sending which customer to edit. And how do you know which customer to edit? The way you know which customer to edit is when you display this information in the customer page, you give that edit button, or you give this name which is clickable, and look at URL down here. It says theme parks slash customers slash 8 slash edit. Okay, so you know which customer to edit. It gives you this ID in the URL, which automatically lets Laravel find out what is the class type and goes in the database and grab the item. Yeah, so those are some very basic stuff that I wanted to send across for students who are having little bit difficulties understanding the absolute basics and little bit issues with migration. Some of them were not able to create the controller well, model well, and associate the data. So if you have any issues, get back over to me on Telegram and send over your screens, and we can fix it, we can try to solve it. Okay guys, so again, that's just to go through the basics again. And those who have already finished the hotel, where you only have adding one item, and room, where you are adding a room and creating this page. Of course, this hotel field comes from the database. Okay, maybe we'll have a look at that before we finish now. And activities also, for example, if you want to add an activity, there is no drop down, you just enter the data activities. Okay, add an activity. Yeah, add an activity. So you fill out the activity data and it will go to the database. So what is different is, in room case, when you are adding a room, it actually pulls this data from the database. Okay, so if you look at your table here for the room table, you have a room table with a room ID, and every time, this is not the room ID, this is not room table, this is a room this is a room table. Every time you have an integer, for example, like this in Laravel 8, for example, it may actually create a problem, because you already have another integer here which is defined as a primary key. So if you come across a scenario where this integer, having this integer, is creating a problem, you can convert it into a string, because this at the end of the day is going to be just a reference field that you are using in order to refer to the other table, which you can easily query with the value. But you must have it. Now some students have changed this by inserting hotel name here. You shouldn't do that, because when the hotel separately has a separate table with hotel ID and hotel name, then there is no point of creating a hotel name column here. But if you change the hotel on the original table, this will not change. So that's not a good option. So always refer to the uh, primary key field of the other column, other table that you are using. So that's important distinction to make. Okay, if you want to give a default value to something, you can give it like this, and you don't have to insert the field here, because it already have a default field. So for example, if you are inserting the data, you don't have to grab this data, because by default they will be free in this column. Okay, So hotel underscore ID. This is how you put reference to other tables by giving the other table name followed by underscore followed by ID. That's how it appears. And if let's say you have some issue here and you want to add one more field here, you can't do this if you have already migrated it. You have to roll back the migrations, but then that might remove many tables, one or two tables or three tables. So the best thing to do will be to drop the table and create a new migration and fill it up. Okay, and that also will take some time. Yeah. So room, hotel, customer, a basic credit. In the room table, how do we pull out this room name instead of room ID? Because in the hotel table we have hotel ID. See, in the hotel table we have hotel ID. So how did we manage to show hotel name here? So this is an important concept you have to remember. Look at your hotel table, hotel.php, not table, hotel file. Look at this. This means there is a one-to-many relationship between hotel and rooms. So we are saying if there is any room, you take a simple room, a single room for example, that is going to be one of these rooms, and this is only going to be referring to one hotel. You see, even if you have another 302, that will not fall in parachutes. It will be there in some other. Okay, so that's how we grab the hotel name. Okay, so this item is called has in the sorry in the room table you say hotel function hotel returns this belongs to means there will be one occurrence of hotel in a room table. See, for example, always this room will belong to one hotel, meaning this row itself will always belong to one hotel, because there's a primary key field here called ID, and that will always repeat only once, because then if there is any other location where you have that room, then that will be a different hotel, not the same hotel. So this is how you use it in the room table, and also in the room dot index file. When you are displaying the data from the room table, what happens in that? Let's have a look. So you have a room here. In the room, if you are listing the customers using the room, where's my room here, index.player.php, you are gathering the items from the database. So instead of displaying the this item, which is the third item, which is the hotel, instead of displaying the hotel ID, we are using this kind of architecture where you have room, hotel, name. Okay. So room, hotel, name. This means go to the room table, it has a hotel, find its hotel name. So these kind of relationships are going to be really beneficial. Now there is an inverse relationship that is, if you have put in the room class that each room will have one hotel, meaning if you take any specific room, that will always will refer to a specific hotel, one specific hotel, because it has a room number, it has an ID, and even if that room number repeats in another hotel, like for example, there can be two hotels where you have room 302, see for example, but they cannot be in the same hotel. Maybe this is a deluxe room, maybe this is a student suite, as you can see here, but they are in different hotels. See, these hotels are different. Yeah. These example stuff, always when you are trying to learn, try to take notes about redirection, raw SQL, some basic tips when you are moving around Laravel, eloquent relationships. Always when you're reading through the web or books, always keep your own personal notes. How do you interact with the database? What does it mean to retrieve all the rows? what does it mean to review a finger roll. Have these notes at hand so you can always use them. How do you manipulate the session variables, so these things you must have them with you in order for you to you can't always Google. It will take a long time to find the issue and solve it. Yeah, so we were saying if the hotel table has this if the room table has hotel function and says belongs to, this means this is belong to one specific hotel. The difference is the inverse relationship will be in the hotel table. You say in the hotel table you have to insert this rooms method, and that means one hotel will have many rooms. So you may have one hotel, and if you look at the room table, there will be many rooms that belong to the same hotel. So you have rooms with capital S, rooms, not room. See, there's also an important distinction. And then you said this dot has many. Of course, you will only need this if you are grabbing the data from the hotel in order to find the data about rooms. Okay, so it has many. This is how you present those relationship. So one to many relationship. So like that you can have relationships associated with each other. For example, an activity, I haven't filled that part. Customer, I haven't filled that part either. But I can show you another case where you have more than one such cases. And this here, for example, I have not this one. In your model, activity scheduler, activity room booking. See, one of the room booking belongs to a schedule, belongs to a room, belongs to a customer, multiple lines. So this is how you relate to other tables if there's a relationship. So that's just a little bit insight into all these things that matter for basic. And if there is any simple problems, come back on Telegram and we can solve that. And that's it for this video. Thank you very much for watching, and see you.